All right, so buckle up because we're diving deep into a book that's basically the anti-fairy tale for anyone who's ever dreamed of, startup glory. We're unpacking Ben Horowitz's The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and we're doing it just for you. It's not about, like, rainbows and unicorns. This book is about the real nitty-gritty of being a CEO, especially in the pressure cooker of high-growth tech companies.
Yeah, and what really sets this book apart, what makes it so valuable,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's all built on Ben's own war stories.
Mm-hmm.
From the trenches of LoudCloud and OpsWare. Forget all that theory. This is about real-life decisions,
Yes.
real-world consequences.
Yeah.
And he tells it with this, like, raw honesty that you just don't see in a lot of business books.
Yeah, totally. And right off the bat, the book kind of hits you with this concept of the struggle. It's not just a theme. It's like it's woven into the DNA of the whole thing. And the idea is that facing down those brutal challenges, those are the moments where real growth happens, both for you personally and for your company.
Yeah, and it's so refreshing because let's face it, most leadership books paint this picture of CEOs as these, flawless superheroes. But Ben, he throws that out the window. He shows you the messy, the human side of leadership, the doubts, the anxieties, the moments where you just want to scream.
Yeah.
And that makes it so much more relatable and so much more useful for anyone who's, actually trying to lead, whether you're, a CEO or just starting out.
Absolutely. And there's this one story where Ben's company, OpsWare, they're facing down this really serious competitor, Blade Logic. And instead of sugarcoating it, Ben just lays out the threat to his team. He basically says, hey, we could get crushed here. And you know what? That honesty actually sparks this incredible burst of innovation. They end up building this killer product that just blows the competition away.
It's amazing, right? And it really highlights this principle that goes way beyond just business, transparency. When you're open and honest, even about the tough stuff, it builds trust. And it gets everyone rowing in the same direction. It's like this problem-solving superpower, not just for CEOs, but for teams in any field.
So we've established that the struggle is kind of the core DNA of this book. But let's dig into some of the actual advice that Ben lays out. One thing that really stood out to me was this mantra: people, product, profits. In that order. It's like his golden rule for building a successful company.
Yeah, and there's such brilliant logic to it. You need the right people to build that amazing product that will then generate the profits. It's like this chain reaction, and people are the spark that sets it all off.
Yeah.
Investing in your team, that's the foundation for everything else.
It totally is, and it reminds me of this killer line from Mark Cranny, the sales whiz at OpsWare. He said, 2% of zero is zero. Meaning, even with the best sales strategy in the world, if you don't have a talented team to execute it, you're going nowhere.
Exactly. And, building a great team, it's about more than just hiring superstars. It's about dealing with those inevitable people challenges that every leader will face. Things like layoffs, demotions, those, awkward, difficult conversations that nobody wants to have but are just
part of the game. Ugh, yeah, for sure. Those are the, unfun parts of leadership. But the book tackles them head on. Ben gives really specific advice on how to handle these tough situations, especially layoffs, which he's had to do himself.
And he's very clear about this. He believes managers should be the ones delivering the news. No matter how uncomfortable it is, it's about showing respect for the employees and taking ownership of a tough decision.
There's this really powerful story about how after a round of layoffs at OpsWare, Ben offered new stock options to the remaining team. And get this. He even gave anyone who wanted to quit the option to walk out right then and there. He was like, take the weekend to think about it.
Wow. Talk about leading with transparency and faith in your people. It was a bold move, but it sent a powerful message. Like, we're all in this together. We're going to be honest with each other, and we're going to come out of this stronger.
Okay, but what about demotions? I mean, how do you tell someone, especially a loyal friend who's been with you since day one, that they're being moved down the ladder? That's got to be gut-wrenching.
Ben actually had to do this at LoudCloud, so he speaks from experience. His advice is all about clarity and respect. Don't beat around the bush. Use clear phrases like, I have decided, and then clearly explain the reasons for the demotion, acknowledge their contributions, and focus on how this move benefits both the company and the individual in the long run.
And he even talks about exploring alternative roles within the company that might be a better fit for their skills, and even, increasing compensation to help smooth the transition. It's about recognizing that even though it's a tough decision, you can still handle it with empathy and a focus on finding the best solution for everyone involved.
Absolutely. And speaking of tricky situations, the book dives into this whole category of smart but bad employees. Ben breaks them down into 3 archetypes: the heretic, the flake, and the jerk. Have you ever come across any of these characters in your own work life?
Oh, definitely. I think everyone has at some point. It's like a universal experience, but it's helpful to have them categorized like that so you can spot the warning signs
Yeah.
and figure out how to deal with them before they wreak havoc.
Right. The heretic is that brilliant mind who's always trying to tear down the company. Instead of building it up, they're masters of finding fault, but rarely offer solutions. Then you have the flake, someone with massive potential who's just consistently inconsistent
Yeah.
and unreliable. And finally, there's the jerk, the one who might be brilliant, but their toxicity, it just poisons the whole team dynamic.
Yeah. Ben has this chilling line that really stuck with me. He says, it takes a really smart person to be maximally destructive. And it's so true. The smarter they are, the more damage they can do if they're not,
Right.
channeled in the right direction.
It's scary how true that is. And that's where recognizing these patterns early on becomes crucial for anyone listening. Don't let things fester. If you see the signs of a heretic, a flake, or a jerk, address the issue directly. And always prioritize the well-being of the team over the brilliance of one individual.
100%. Okay, so we've talked about navigating the minefield of difficult employees. But the book also dives into something that's often misunderstood: company culture. And Ben's take is pretty refreshing. He's adamant that it's not about ping pong tables and free snacks.
Yeah, he's not about those superficial perks. For him, it's about the soul of your company, how work actually gets done, the values that drive decisions, the unspoken rules that shape behavior. It should set you apart from the competition, ensure that your core beliefs persist even as you grow, and help you attract the right kind of talent.
He gives this awesome example from Ben Horowitz, the VC firm he co-founded. They have this $10 per minute late rule for meetings with entrepreneurs. Sounds harsh, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually about sending a clear message. We respect your time and we value punctuality.
It's brilliant. It's about aligning actions with words and creating a culture where everyone understands what's truly important, which, when you think about it, is the essence of Ben's whole philosophy, right?
Totally. It's about showing respect, prioritizing the right things, and walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And speaking of tough choices, the book really gets into the loneliness of being a CEO, especially when you're facing those make or break moments for the company.
Yeah, he recounts his own experience with Loud Cloud nearly going bankrupt. He had to make impossible choices with limited information and very little support. The weight of those decisions, the potential consequences for everyone involved, it all falls on your shoulders.
It's a powerful reminder that even if you're not a CEO, you'll face situations where you have to make tough calls with imperfect information. And that's where learning to analyze risks, weigh options, and be decisive, even under pressure, that becomes essential.
Absolutely. He actually shares some really practical techniques for coping with those intense pressures. He talks about seeking out mentors who've been through similar situations, writing down the problem to gain clarity, and trying to separate emotions from the decision-making process. As hard as that might be.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here already. Embracing the struggle, building a team, navigating tricky people situations, establishing a strong culture, making those gut-wrenching decisions when the stakes are high. But we've only just scratched the surface. The book doesn't just offer a bunch of random tips. It really digs into the question, what makes a great CEO?
And what's fascinating is that Ben doesn't pretend there's some easy formula or checklist. Instead, he focuses on the skills and the mindset that you need to survive and thrive. In the chaos of leadership, it's not about what you know. It's about how you think, how you adapt, how you lead under fire.
And he actually lays out a framework for evaluating CEOs based on 3 core elements: knowing what to do, getting the company to do what you want, and achieving those desired results.
Right. It's not enough to just have a vision. You have to be able to articulate it, inspire people to buy into it,
Yeah.
and then build a system
Yeah.
that can execute on it effectively and all of that, while constantly measuring your progress, adjusting your approach, and making sure you're actually moving the needle on the metrics that matter.
He tells this funny story about how he initially misjudged the IPO price for Baidu, which, is a pretty big deal. It shows that even brilliant CEOs make mistakes. But it's their ability to learn from those mistakes, to adapt to unexpected situations, and to keep pushing forward. That sets them apart.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting for anyone listening, regardless of whether they're running a company or not. Because these qualities, decisiveness, adaptability, the ability to rally people around a vision, those are valuable leadership skills, no matter what your role is, whether you're leading a team, a project, or even just yourself through a challenging situation. These are the building blocks of success.
And that's what makes this book really relatable. It's not just about the science. It's about the human side. It's about the emotional side. It's about the personal growth. And it's about the So much more than just a business manual. It's a guide to navigating the complexities of life, work, and everything in between. It's about embracing challenges, building resilience, and ultimately becoming a better leader, no matter what your definition of leadership is.
It really is. It's a book that stays with you long after you finish reading it, and it makes you think differently about what it means to lead and what it means to succeed. And what's so brilliant about how Ben delivers all this advice is that he grounds it in real-world stories. These aren't just abstract concepts. They're lessons forged in the fire of his own successes, and just as importantly, his failures. You really feel like you're getting this behind-the-scenes look
Yeah.
at what it actually takes to build and run a company.
It's so true. It's like you're sitting in on a masterclass with this battle-scarred CEO, not just
Mhm.
reading some textbook. And one thing that really resonated with me is that this book goes way beyond just business strategy. It's almost like a guide to personal growth, especially when it comes to developing that mental toughness you need to survive in these high pressure environments.
Absolutely. He talks about this idea of the peacetime CEO versus the wartime CEO, and how you have to be able to shift between those mindsets depending on what's happening around you. It's
Mm.
like having this dual personality for leadership.
Okay, break that down for me. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, imagine it like this. The peacetime CEO is focused on building and scaling the company. It's about setting those long-term goals, fostering innovation, and creating a stable, positive work environment. Think of it as steering a ship on calm seas.
Got it. Steady growth, smooth sailing. So when does the wartime CEO come out to play?
When the proverbial shit hits the fan, when there's a crisis, a major threat, or a competitor trying to take you down, the wartime CEO has to be ruthless, decisive, and ready to make those tough calls to ensure survival. It's less about consensus building and more about taking command and leading the charge.
He actually compares it to a general leading troops into battle, which is a pretty intense analogy, but it makes sense. Sometimes you have to make those unpopular decisions, take risks, and fight like hell for what you believe in, even if it means going against the grain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that fight, that constant pressure,
Yeah.
it can take a real toll, both mentally and emotionally. Ben's really honest about that. He talks about the isolation, the fear, the moments of self-doubt that every leader experiences, especially when the stakes are high. It's like this hidden cost of leadership that most people don't talk about.
I love that he doesn't shy away from the emotional side of things. He talks about his own struggles with anxiety and
Yeah.
those moments where he felt completely overwhelmed. It's a good reminder that even the most successful CEOs are human. And those vulnerabilities don't make you weak. They actually make you a more effective leader.
Right. It's about acknowledging your limitations,
Right.
seeking support when you need it, and finding ways to stay grounded
Hmm.
in the midst of all the chaos. It's about recognizing that leading a company is a marathon, not a sprint, and you have to take care of yourself if you want to go the distance.
Okay, so we've talked about this big picture stuff, embracing the struggle, understanding those different CEO mindsets, dealing with the emotional roller coaster of leadership. But I want to get a little more tactical here. What are some of the specific techniques Ben shares for actually getting things done, for translating vision into reality?
He dives deep into a lot of areas, but one that really stands out is his emphasis on communication. He's a huge believer in clear, concise, direct communication, especially when it comes to setting expectations and giving feedback. No sugarcoating, no beating around the bush.
He talks about this thing called the shit sandwich approach to giving feedback, where you start with something positive, then deliver the negative feedback, and then end on another positive note. What do you think about that? Is that something you found to be effective?
Honestly, while the shit sandwich can work in some situations, I think it's important to adapt your communication style to the person you're talking to and the specific context. Sometimes direct feedback is what's needed, and sometimes you have to be a bit more nuanced in your approach.
He also talks about this idea of managing by questioning rather than managing by dictating, which sounds a lot more collaborative, a lot more empowering.
That's a really powerful technique, and it goes beyond just giving orders. It's about encouraging your team to come up with their own solutions, to think critically, to challenge assumptions.
It reminds me of that famous quote, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. It's about empowering people, not just telling them what to do.
Exactly. And it all goes back to creating a culture of curiosity and continuous learning. Ben's big on surrounding yourself with smart people who will challenge your thinking and help you see things from different perspectives. He even talks about having a board of advisors outside of your formal board of directors, people you can trust to give you honest feedback, even when it's tough to hear.
That makes a lot of sense, especially for entrepreneurs who are often going through things that their friends and family just can't relate to. Having a group of battle-tested advisors who've been there, done that, can be invaluable. It's like having your own personal SWAT team for navigating the challenges of building a company.
And let's not forget the mental and emotional toll. All of this takes on the leader. The pressure, the stress, the constant decision-making. It can be overwhelming. Ben's really open about his own struggles with finding balance and maintaining his sanity in the midst of all the chaos.
He shares some really practical tips for dealing with that. Things like creating routines, setting boundaries, and finding ways to disconnect and recharge. He's even a big advocate for exercise and therapy as essential tools for maintaining mental and emotional well-being. It's like he's saying, look, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself if you want to take care of your company.
And that includes building a strong support network, having people you can confide in, people who can offer encouragement and perspective, people who will just listen without judgment. It's crucial for staying grounded and sane.
Okay, so we've covered the personal side of leadership, but I want to shift gears a bit and talk about strategy. What are some of the key strategic insights that Ben shares in the book? Stuff that anyone, even if they're not a CEO, can apply to their own work or life.
One of the most fundamental principles he emphasizes is this idea of focusing on your core competency. It's about identifying what your company, or you as an individual, does better than anyone else, and building your strategy around that strength. It's like playing to your strengths, doubling down on what you're truly great at.
And then there's the concept of pivoting, which has become such a buzzword in the startup world. But Ben really breaks down when and how to change direction. When your initial strategy isn't working, it's not about giving up. It's about being adaptable and responsive to changing circumstances.
He compares it to a ship captain who has to adjust course based on the wind of the waves. It's about being flexible, being willing to let go of your original plan, and constantly learning from your mistakes.
So it's not just about having a great plan, it's about having the agility to adjust that plan when the world throws you a curveball, which, let's face it, happens all the time.
And that's where having a strong team comes in, a team that can execute on your vision, but also adapt to those changes in direction without missing a beat.
It reminds me of that saying, plans are nothing, planning is everything. It's about the process, the adaptability, the ability to work together to achieve a common goal, even when the goalposts keep moving.
Right. And a big part of that is building a culture where people feel empowered to contribute their ideas, to take risks, and to learn from their failures. It's about creating an environment where people are excited to come to work every day and feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
He even talks about the importance of hiring above your own ability, so you're constantly surrounded by people who are smarter than you are in different areas, which is a pretty humbling concept, but it makes sense if you're trying to build something truly great.
It's about acknowledging your own limitations and creating a team that complements your strengths and fills in your gaps. It's about surrounding yourself with people who will push you to be better, to think differently, and to constantly grow as a leader.
Okay, so we've got the right team in place, we're adaptable, we're focused on our core competency. What else is crucial for translating strategy into actual results?
Ben is a big believer in building a culture of accountability. It's not about micromanaging or punishing people. It's about creating an environment where everyone is responsible for their actions and held to a high standard.
It's like that old saying, what gets measured gets managed. You have to have clear goals, clear metrics for success, and a system for tracking progress and holding people accountable for delivering on their commitments.
And Ben's a big believer in using data to drive decisions, not just gut instinct or intuition. It's about being data-driven, tracking your progress, identifying problems early on, and making adjustments along the way.
He even talks about the importance of A/B testing, different approaches, to see what works best. It's a constant process of experimentation, iteration, and improvement.
It's like he's applying the scientific method to building a company.
Yeah.
You have a hypothesis,
Mm.
you test it, you analyze the results, and you adjust your approach based on the data. It's a never-ending cycle of learning and optimization.
He even compares it to a scientist conducting experiments in a lab, which is a pretty cool way to think about it. It's about being methodical, rigorous, and always looking for ways to improve your results.
And that brings us to another crucial element of success, something that's often overlooked: execution.
Hmm.
It's not enough to have a brilliant strategy. You have to be able to actually put that strategy into action and get things done.
He's adamant that ideas are worthless without execution. It's like having a great recipe, but never actually cooking the meal. You have to get your hands dirty, put in the work, and turn those ideas into tangible results.
He compares it to a football team with a perfect game plan, but can't execute on the field. Doesn't matter how good your strategy is if you can't make it happen.
He even shares some really tactical advice for improving execution. Things like breaking down large goals into smaller, more manageable steps, setting clear deadlines, and creating systems and processes for getting things done.
It's about creating a culture of execution
Yeah.
where everyone is focused on results and working together to achieve those results. No matter what obstacles they encounter along the way, it's about having that relentless drive to make things happen.
And that brings us back to one of the core themes of the book, something that permeates every chapter,
Yeah.
every story, every piece of advice: leadership.
Ben is very clear that leadership is not about your title or your position on the org chart. It's about your actions,
Yeah.
your ability to inspire and motivate others, and your willingness to take responsibility for the results.
He defines leadership as the ability to get people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it,
Mhm.
which is a pretty powerful statement. It's not about coercion or manipulation. It's about inspiring people to believe in your vision and empowering them to make it a reality.
And he breaks down some of the key traits of effective leaders. Things like being decisive, being accountable, being transparent, and being empathetic. It's about being someone people trust, someone people want to follow, someone who inspires them to be their best selves.
And he's incredibly open about his own journey as a leader, the mistakes he's made, the lessons he's learned, the times he's fallen flat on his face. It's a reminder that leadership is a continuous journey, not a destination.
And that even the most successful leaders
Yeah.
are still works in progress. It's about embracing that journey,
Yeah.
constantly seeking out feedback, and always striving to be better today than you were yesterday.
So we've talked about leadership strategy, execution, building a team, creating a culture, but there's one more big idea that I want to touch on, something that really gets to the heart of why we build companies in the first place.
And that's the idea of building a great company, a company that goes beyond just making money and actually makes a positive impact on the world.
He's very clear that building a great company is about more than just profits. It's about creating something that you're proud of, something that adds value to the world, something that leaves a lasting legacy.
He defines a great company as one that makes the world a better place and creates value for all stakeholders, including employees, customers, investors, and society as a whole. It's about having a purpose that goes beyond just the bottom line.
He even talks about the importance of building a company that you would be proud to tell your grandchildren about. It's about building something that stands the test of time, something that makes a real difference, something that you can look back on and say, yeah, that was something special.
And he acknowledges that building a great company is hard work. It requires dedication, perseverance, and a willingness to overcome countless obstacles. There will be setbacks. There will be challenges. There will be moments where you want to give up.
But he also argues that it's one of the most rewarding things you can do in life. It's about creating something bigger than yourself, something that outlasts you, something that makes a positive dent in the universe.
And that brings us to one of those powerful takeaways from the book, something that resonated with me deeply. It's not just about the destination. It's about the journey.
It's about embracing the struggle, learning from your mistakes, and never giving up on your dreams. It's about finding joy in the process, even when things get tough, and recognizing that the real rewards come from the growth you experience along the way.
And it's about building a company or a life that you can be proud of, a company that makes a difference, a life that matters.
You know, it's funny when you think about it, a lot of these principles that Ben lays out for building a company can be applied to building a life. It's about setting goals, surrounding yourself with the right people, being adaptable, persevering through challenges, and ultimately creating something meaningful.
Absolutely. The book is packed with wisdom that transcends the world of business and speaks to something much deeper, something more universal.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the mindset, the strategies, the tactics, the emotional roller coaster of leadership. But what really brings all of this to life are the stories, the real-world examples that Ben uses to illustrate these concepts. And there's one story in particular that I think perfectly captures the essence of what this book is all about.
You're talking about the EDS situation, right? Their biggest customer at Opsware,
Yeah.
the one that nearly brought the whole company down.
That's the one. It's a story about crisis, about resilience, about problem solving under immense pressure, and ultimately it's a story about turning a potential disaster into a major win.
Let's break it down for our listener, because this story is packed with lessons that anyone can apply to their own life, even if they're not dealing with a multi-million-dollar business crisis.
So set the scene for us. What was the situation with EDS and why was it such a big deal for Opsware? Okay, so picture this: Opsware's riding high. They've just landed this massive contract with EDS. It's basically their golden ticket. EDS is like, The whale of all customers. They're representing a huge chunk of Opsware's revenue. But then things start to go south. EDS is having all these technical problems with Opsware software, and they're threatening to pull the plug on the whole deal. Talk about a high-stakes situation.
Oh, yeah, it was a total nightmare scenario. They were facing the potential loss of 90% of their revenue, which for most companies would be a death sentence.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating is how Ben and his team approached this crisis. They didn't panic. They didn't point fingers. They just went into this full-on problem-solving mode.
It's amazing, right? It's like a masterclass in crisis management. Ben breaks down how they systematically identified the root causes of the issue, developed a plan of attack, and rallied the entire company to execute that plan with laser focus. It's a testament to the power of clear thinking, decisive action, and a team that's willing to go above and beyond when the chips are down.
It really is. And what's so instructive for anyone listening is that this problem-solving framework, it can be applied to any challenge, not just business situations. Whether you're facing a personal crisis, a career setback, or a major project gone wrong, the principles are the same. Identify the root cause, develop a plan, and execute with relentless focus.
And it wasn't just about, technical fixes. They also had to understand the human element, the personalities involved, the motivations, and even the personal preferences of the key decision makers at EDS. Remember that anecdote about the EDS executive who always requested the longest possible layover at the airport bar because he hated his job?
Oh yeah, that's a classic. That's the kind of detail that you wouldn't find in most business books.
Yeah.
But it highlights this crucial point. Understanding the human element. It's just as important as the technical aspects. It's about empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, understanding what makes them tick.
Exactly. And in the end, Opsware managed to turn things around, save the deal, and even strengthen their relationship with EDS. It's a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of never giving up, and the value of having a team that's willing to fight for something they believe in.
It's a great story of, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. It's a reminder that even when things look bleak, there's always a path forward. If you're willing to put in the work, stay focused, and never lose sight of the goal.
Now, on a slightly heavier note, the book also dives into the brutal reality of navigating a company through a financial crisis. Ben walks us through the near bankruptcy of LoudCloud, laying bare the tough choices he had to make, the weight of those decisions, and the emotional toll it took on him.
What's so striking is his honesty about it. The fear, the self-doubt, the loneliness of being the CEO in those moments. He doesn't try to sugarcoat it or pretend it's easy. It's this raw and vulnerable account of what it feels like to be responsible for the livelihoods of hundreds of people when the future of the company is hanging by a thread.
It's intense, and he talks about seeking advice from mentors, but ultimately having to make the final call himself, knowing that the consequences, good or bad, rested squarely on his shoulders. It's a powerful reminder that leadership isn't about having all the answers or always making the right decisions. It's about having the courage to make those tough calls, even when you're not sure what the outcome will be, and learning from the inevitable mistakes along the way.
And the lesson for anyone listening, whether they're leading a company, a team, or even just their own life, is that you have to be comfortable with uncertainty, with making decisions based on imperfect information, with the possibility of failure. That's just part of the game.
It's about being decisive, taking ownership, and constantly adapting to changing circumstances, even when those circumstances feel like they're trying to crush you.
It's about having that grit, that resilience, to keep going even when it's hard.
One thing that really struck me about the book was the way it ends. It doesn't offer this neat and tidy conclusion or a step-by-step guide to guaranteed success. Instead, it ends with this powerful reflection on the journey itself, the messy, chaotic, often painful, but ultimately rewarding journey of building something meaningful.
It's beautiful, and it's true. It's not about finding easy answers or shortcuts, but about embracing the struggle, developing the resilience to persevere through those dark times, and ultimately finding your own unique path to success, whatever that looks like for you.
And what makes Ben's story so compelling is how he connects his personal journey as a CEO to the broader human experience of anyone, facing challenges and striving to create something meaningful. It's a reminder that we all face struggle, we all make mistakes, and we all have to find our own way through the darkness.
It's a very human story, and I think that's the most valuable takeaway for our listeners. This book is more than just business advice. It's a guide to navigating the complexities of life, facing those inevitable challenges head on, and finding the strength and wisdom to make tough choices, even when it feels like the world is falling apart around you.
Absolutely. And it's a call to action, too.
Yeah.
Embrace the struggle, lead with courage and empathy, and build something that matters, something that makes a difference, something that you can be proud of. So if you're looking for a book that will challenge you, inspire you, and maybe even make you laugh along the way, I highly recommend checking out The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to understand the realities of leadership, the messy but ultimately rewarding journey of building something great, and the enduring power of the human spirit.
And remember, it's not about avoiding the tough stuff. It's about learning to navigate it, to grow from it, and to emerge stronger on the other side. That's where the real magic happens.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's it for our deep dive into the hard thing about hard things. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep into